Okay, right, so it's coming up to 2 minutes past 6 here in the Algarve. So we've got lots to get through, so we shall jump in. We've still got a few joining. I'm sure we'll be able to catch up as we go. Lots of questions coming. We have lots of registrations for this evening, more than usual. A clear anticipation of course, the news from the parliamentary vote here in Portugal yesterday, which we're looking forward to covering with everyone in this evening's webinar. It's again courtesy for portugal.com. It's a regular feature now. I've been talking with the readers from portugal.com for the last few months, keeping everyone up to date on what is going on here on the ground with regards to the Golden Visa. It is something that is a very much talked about topic right now, and is something that continues to change and difficult to keep track of ever since the initial announcement back in February from the Prime Minister. But the last webinar was a few weeks back. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to be talking about this evening. We really didn't know what to expect from yesterday's parliamentary vote. But I'm here and I have overall very good news, and I'm looking forward to covering that off. There are some significant changes to ensue with the programme, but overall it is much better news than what we were expecting back in February. But we'll to follow on that as we go through. Main focus of today's, like I said, to give an update on what is going on. I'll also be covering off the basics for those at the beginning of the Golden Visa journey as to what it is and who it's for, who can be included, to help maybe understand if it's something that you should be exploring at the moment. And then really, as we come to the end, it's going to be focused on a live Q&A session. The clock is ticking with the programme now, and although it is still open, like I said, there are going to be some significant changes. So the goal of these webinars is to answer everyone's questions in a timely fashion. There's a lot of questions that come up which are very similar, so I may be able to answer a lot of those as we go through the information this evening. But for anything that I do miss, or any questions that you have on the topics that I cover, you'll see a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So please do feel free to drop any messages in the Q&A at the bottom, and I shall be sure to come back to those before we finish. We'll get stuck in. For those that haven't joined the webinar with portugal.com in the past, if you've not come across myself before, my name is Jason Swan. I'm one of the senior partners at Holborn Assets, who are actually a wealth management practice and one of the largest wealth management practices now in Europe. We manage in excess of $3 billion between our 20 offices worldwide. My main job, well, I say main job, probably less of my main job these days, but I'm a fully qualified and regulated financial planner, generally focusing on helping those looking to move into Europe understand the local tax laws and, of course, how to maximize their income and minimize their taxes as they become tax resident here in the EU. But around about 6 years back, Holborn launched a service designed specifically to help clients achieve residency and citizenship by way of investment in different countries around the world. Of course, today's webinar is going to be around the Portugal Golden Visa, which is Portugal's investment visa. But it's not the only program that we offer. We also venture into the likes of Cyprus, Greece, the US, also into the likes of St. Lucia, and other Caribbean islands as well. Portugal does take up I would say it's definitely the most popular citizenship program that we do. And myself, I've been in Portugal now for coming on for 2 years now. I've been through all the hoops and hurdles myself. I came across from Spain. Actually, I lived in Spain for 5 years previous to Portugal. If you couldn't already pick up from my slight accent from the UK, I'm originally from Manchester, back in England before Spain. But I've been an expat myself now for 7 years. I fell in love with Portugal, even though I kind of like Spain. There's something different about Portugal, a little more welcoming. It feels a little bit more like home. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but like I said, I'm here. I'm in the Algarve. I've been here for 2 years now, and I'll hopefully be able to answer any questions that you have generally around Portugal, as well as being able to help with the technical questions around the visa and any financial questions with regard to your financial planning or any tax planning along the way as well. The main focus is going to be covering off the visa this evening. But again, please do drop any questions in the Q&A as we go through, and I'll offer as much help as I can before we finish. And we've got until about the hour this evening to get through as much as we can. So I'm probably preaching to the choir for the majority of the people on the webinar at the moment, but for those that are still a little bit in the dark as to what the visa is, okay, it is a 2-year visa to live in Portugal. Okay, the Golden Visa is Europe's most successful residency and citizenship scheme that was launched back in 2012. There's now been over 11,000 successful applications that have been converted, or certainly on their way to being converted to a EU passport, which is the treasure at the end of the rainbow, if you like. Once you've held the Golden Visa for just 5 years, you can then apply for your passport, which allows you to live in any of the EU countries. So again, it's a 2-year visa, but you can renew every 2 years. And after you've held it for 5 years, you then have a pathway to EU citizenship to live anywhere in Europe. The real kind of plus part of the Golden Visa is that you don't have to live in Portugal to kind of start that clock ticking for the 5 years. You only have to actually reside in Portugal for just 1 week every year, or 2 weeks every 2 years, formally, to maintain the visa. So with just 5 weeks spent in Portugal over the next 5 years, you can apply for the passport. And that comes with, of course, a number of benefits, whether it is for yourself or your family. With a Golden Visa, and certainly with the passport, you get access to all the attributes of Portugal. The main kind of pulling points to Portugal is the healthcare system. Okay, it's got one of the highest rated healthcare systems anywhere in the world. It also has an incredibly low crime rate and has access to world-class education at all levels as well. So there's a lot to offer from the country. Naturally, it is just a nice place to live. I didn't particularly come here for the healthcare, fortunately. I'm generally pretty healthy and not too much on Portuguese education. However, for me, it is just an incredible place to live. I'm down in the south, in the Algarve, where it's typically a little bit warmer. The beaches are a little bit nicer, but I am slightly biased towards the south. Of course, you do have Lisbon, which is the main hub, much more cosmopolitan. And up north, you have Porto. And those generally are the three kind of hotspots in Portugal. You can, of course, live inland Portugal as well. You can live in the middle of nowhere, if you like. You have complete peace and quiet. But if you do want to be close to the beaches, or there's a little bit more to do, then generally the Algarve, Lisbon, and Porto are the three hotspots for expats, all of which you're not going to go too far wrong with. Like I said, I personally like to be down towards the south, and I'm only 1 hour away from the Spanish border. So if I do want to nip back to Spain to see friends, then it's quite easy to do so. There is one incentive that did attract me, and that was actually the tax treatment for new residents as well. Apart from the sunshine for 300 days per year, for new residents, you can apply for a very unique tax regime called NHR, which actually allows you to have a very low rate of tax on certain types of overseas income. In particular, for those that are able to draw income by way of dividends, whether it be from a investment portfolio or a personal holding in a private company, you can actually draw dividend income in Portugal completely tax-free for the first 10 years that you live here. There are some caveats to that, one being that the dividends need to come from a country that has a tax treaty with Portugal, which covers pretty much most of the first world. So dividends completely tax-free. Rental income is also completely tax-free for the first 10 years. For those that are looking to rent out their home and retire to Portugal by keeping the residence, that's going to work great. If you generate income from an existing property portfolio, again, it's going to work really well for you. But those are the two tax-free incomes that you can draw. What else have we got in the mix? We've also got for those that are still working. So if you are working, whether employed or self-employed, you may fall into the category where you can apply for a flat rate of just 20% income tax, depending on the area or the sector that you work in. And lastly, the pension income as well. Pension income also used to be tax-free up until I think maybe 4 years ago. It's still pretty low, but you get a special rate of tax of just 10% on pension income from abroad as well, which is not too shabby. And for those that are going to be drawing long-term income, both during and after that initial NHR period, there are investment vehicles where you can hold your assets, whether it be investment funds or direct equities, whereas you can actually attract a discount of 60% on the tax payable for the rest of your life as well. So we try to structure things where you can have a tax-free income when you arrive in Portugal, but then also running alongside that is the necessary tools in the background so that when the NHR expires, you then benefit from that 60% deduction thereafter as well. So as much as financial planning might not be deemed as exciting, Portugal is my favourite because there's loads of different ways in which you can minimise your taxation and maximise your income. In turn, of course, your standard of living here as well. So not going to try and send everyone to sleep on tax. It is an important topic. It is an incentive, but any questions on that? Probably best to discuss on a one-to-one basis, but feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A. Okay, so let's get stuck in. So where do I start? Where do I start? Right, so just as a quick recap, so back in February this year, if you have been looking at the Golden Visa since February, you will remember many headlines all over the internet and newspaper outlets saying the Golden Visa has finished, it's all over, it's ended, it's done and dusted. And there was a lot of panic at the time. We had clients that were kind of in the process, and there's a lot of questions. And in short, it was terrible reporting, and all the headlines at the time were inaccurate. Not all of them, but the ones trying to attract attention with bad news were incorrect, because the Golden Visa is still active. And the first thing I just want to make clear for everybody, regardless of what you're seeing maybe in the news and all the what's the word I'm looking for? All the confusion, shall we say, around what's happening with the Golden Visa, it is still active. Okay, it is exactly the same today as it was last year and the year before that. Okay, CEF is still accepting applications. Currently, no rules have changed. Everything is exactly the same as it has been for the past couple of years. However, in February, the story began with the Prime Minister making an announcement that he wishes to close the programme in its entirety, which came as a little bit of a shock, although he did make reference to it back in November last year, which we took with a bit of a pinch of salt. But this time came back with a vengeance in February and made it very clear that the programme is going to be closed. Naturally, it is not the Prime Minister's decision alone to do that, and there is a process to follow before anything can happen and the law can change. But since February, so where we are now, kind of July, so yeah, for the past 4 or 5 months, it has just been one big ongoing debate of, it's just been a tennis match, backwards and forwards. Is it going to close? Is it not? Are the rules going to change? And yeah, things are progressing. We're at the very final stages at this point of now seeing the new laws come into effect. But there was a public discussion until the end of March. All the different sectors and heads and industries within Portugal put their case forward as to whether or not they agree with the closure of the programme, or if there is a better solution to solve what is the problem at the moment, which is the housing crisis, with generally housing prices going or continuing to increase, and the lack of available housing generally in Portugal. And the removal of the Golden Visa is one of 16 potential solutions to help solve that crisis. But there was a public discussion, everyone got together, everyone put their case forward to see what the best solution was. Ultimately, the updated draft law stayed very much the same. There was a couple of comments made by the Prime Minister which were removed to do with kind of retrospectively changing the laws, which has been confirmed is not possible. But all in all, the draft change in law stayed very much the same. And the programme was still set to close in its entirety. So that takes us up until around about April time, I think early May. There was a kind of a local government vote, if you like, as to whether or not the law or the change of law should be amended in any way. And it continues and so forth. And then all of a sudden, literally 3 weeks back, there was a huge announcement that the Golden Visa is not going to be cancelled after all this time. The Golden Visa lives on, and the government no longer wants to close the Golden Visa programme, which was a little bit of a surprise, very welcome surprise, of course. But the good news is of all this that the Golden Visa programme is not ending. Okay, it is going to continue, hopefully for many years to come. However, there is some significant changes that are still being proposed, which of course we're going to cover in a moment. But as it stands, there was a parliamentary vote yesterday, and the consensus is that the Golden Visa program will no longer be available to those that are investing through property. Up until recently, you could invest into both you could invest into both commercial and residential real estate. However, with the new laws set to come into play, all types of property or anything directly or indirectly investing into property will no longer qualify for the program. Unfortunately, 95% of applications over the past 12 months have been through real estate investment. So it is by far the most popular investment selection. But it is that is set to close. So the program is going to remain, but not with the option of investing into property. So we're at the stage now where we're just waiting for the president to implement that law. Like I said, it was the final stage of voting yesterday. We were kind of hoping there might be some talk of a grace period, maybe some amendments to include property, but as it stands, that is not the case. So let me just kind of explain what the changes are going to be at this point. So, as I mentioned, golden visas for real estate will no longer be included in the qualifying criteria. Okay, now, if you're familiar with the program, you'll be aware that property is the only way to qualify for the visa with just €280,000. Now, removing that, other than donations, effectively, the minimum investment will be increasing to 500,000, and that can be done in a number of different ways. Now, we've always been able to invest into investment funds. It used to be from 350. It changed back in 2022 from 350 to 500. But those are to remain. The government has said, look, we're actually quite happy to keep this investment route. It will help us to diversify foreign investment away from just property and into other areas. And you can invest into your typical investment funds, whether it be low, medium, or high risk with varying returns. But they must be Portuguese investment funds, where 60% of the fund is investing into Portuguese assets. So they're not the type of funds that you would maybe choose from on the open market, but there are still some good funds of different type to choose from. But again, the minimum investment for an investment fund is 500,000. There are some plus points to that as well. Of course, buying property, there are often taxes to pay, which can be quite heavy as well in Portugal. Investment funds don't have that initial tax. And there are pros and cons, as I say, but whilst property has been at just 280 and offering some pretty heavy rental returns, it has hugely outweighed the thought of going into an investment fund. But more on that to follow. That's going to stay in place. That's a big thumbs up. That is the kind of next go-to option from property as far as investment returns and security and how you could qualify when property is removed. So yeah, there'll be more information to follow on that. We do still currently await clarity from the president as to exactly what types of funds will be allowed. There is talk still ongoing around the possibility of investing into property funds and whether or not that will be allowed, or if it's going to be directed more towards, for example, renewable energy or farmland or one of many different environmentally friendly purposes that you can choose from in Portugal. Either way, as of course, Holborn, we're one of the largest wealth management companies in Europe, and we are going to be putting together a portfolio, if you will, of qualifying investment funds once it's made clear exactly what the criteria is going to be. But for now, all I can say is that it will be from 500,000 to do that, and there'll be different investment funds to choose from in the not too distant future, all being well. The other way to qualify, which again has always been in place, you can set up a business. You can set up a business in Portugal, or you can purchase an existing business in Portugal, subject to maintaining at least 5 members of staff. If you set up a brand new business, it must be 10 members of staff. And again, the minimum investment is €500,000. There is a way to qualify for the program by way of donation. Okay, for those that want to donate to Portugal, you can do that. There are some other. You can also get involved with filmmaking as well, which is kind of a little bit of a strange one, really, but it carries with it its own kind of investment risk, if you will. But it is the cultural investment route. But generally, those are options that have always been there, but never have been taken up. Other than that, what else has been confirmed? The government's confirmed that the applications already in the system will be honoured. We knew this a couple of weeks back, but there's not going to be any changes to applications submitted before the law comes into effect. Okay, so for people that are looking to get involved now, you can still do so. And as long as your application is submitted before the law changes, then you will be protected under the current laws and you can benefit from the current investment criteria. Family reunification is not to change, which is great news. And also a big win is that you do not have to move to Portugal to get the visa, which was in question a couple of months back. But you can still maintain the visa with just 7 days stay per year. So with just 5 weeks over the next 5 years in Portugal, you can get the passport, which of course opens many doors both for yourself and potentially your family to live anywhere in Europe. There's no grace period currently discussed. We were hoping that may be proposed. Earlier this year, Ireland closed their Golden Visa program, and there was a 3-month grace period. That's still not been mentioned at this point. In theory, the president may still choose to do that, but as it stands, we're not expecting any type of grace period. But those are the proposed changes. So, in summary, big thumbs up. It is staying. The Golden Visa is staying. It's not going anywhere. But there are some significant changes. Mainly, the minimum investment is going from 280 to 500, and property of all types will be removed from the criteria, allowing investments into just those other options that we mentioned a moment ago. So on that moment, before I go through the next slide, I'm just going to take a couple of questions, and then we'll move on to the next bit. So, hi there, Marie. If I'm back in the process, could Portugal decide one cannot become a Portugal and EU resident in 5 years? You'll be pleased to know, Marie, no. The answer is no, on the basis that you submit your application before the law actually comes into effect. It has been confirmed by the Prime Minister and the government that any applications submitted before the law physically changes will be honoured. Okay, and that applies both for the renewal process after each 2-year period and also the application to apply for citizenship and also for family reunification laws further down the line as well. So, nope, you have nothing to fear on that point. Okay, what are your fees and charges? Hi there, Mr. Anonymous. We don't charge any fees ourselves. If we are to, obviously, we get paid by helping you find an investment first and foremost. So our fees are covered by the provider of your chosen investment. Ultimately, we facilitate the entire process, which allows the developer to sell a property or the fund manager to attract further investment. As our fees are covered for our investors, fees are generally broken down into 2 parts. One is the tax that you pay, which varies depending on the type of investment that you go for. And the second is legal fees. Okay, you will need a lawyer to transact the change of ownership if it's a property, or to consult if it is an investment fund as well. What I would say on that is I'm going to show everybody shortly how you can still qualify for the program with 280,000, including a brand new, literally off the press this morning, property release, which I was very surprised about, to be fair, but 2 really good properties to show everybody. And for costings, really, it's just a case of booking in a meeting with me. I just need to know how many family members you'd like to include, which property or investment is your favourite, and then I can give you a very clear rundown of all the costs involved over the next 6 years. Okay, hi there, Cambria. What is the tax rate on social security income for US investors under NHR? Very good question, Cambria. Now, a little bit of bad news for US nationals. The downside is that as a US citizen, you are from one of just 2 countries in the entire world that will continue to tax you, even if you move away from the US. So the US tax laws effectively override those here in Portugal. So in short, although you can apply for an HR and you can still get all the discounts and protection from Portuguese taxes, you will still be liable to US taxes if you maintain your US passport. So it's not quite as exciting for an HR for US investors, unless after a period of 5 years you swap the US passport for the Portuguese one, which in itself carries pros and cons. But as far as the tax payable in the US, Cambria, I would get shot if I even attempted to talk live about US taxes. But please do book in a meeting with me. We can cover that on a one-to-one basis. And we can bring a US tax specialist in on our discussion so that you've got a clear understanding of tax in the US as well. Just on that point, it's a good question, because it's also important to note that by doing the Golden Visa, nobody is changing their tax residency. It's a common misconception. Whereas if you have permission to live in Portugal, if you have the visa, it does not mean that your tax changes. You can have a golden visa in 5 different countries, but if you still live in the same country, your tax residency will not change. It's only at the point that you physically move your person to Portugal when you become tax resident. Up until that point, your tax will not change. The only tax that you'll pay in Portugal before you actually live here is on any income derived from within Portugal, such as rental income, for example. But other than that, your tax does not change. Hi there, Dominic. What is the tax treatment on a capital gain from the sales of shares in a limited company? The flat rate of tax for capital gains is 28% in Portugal, and sale of shares, unfortunately, does not come under NHR. It is only dividends from shares that would be deemed tax-free, but the sale of shares or the sale of any asset would be deemed, well, of course, if sold at a profit, will be deemed as a capital gain. If you're in Portugal at that point, you'll pay a flat rate of 28%. If you're not in Portugal at that point, you'll simply pay the capital gains tax payable in the country where you live at that point. Portugal has tax treaties in line with the likes of the UK and the US, so you'll never pay double tax. But depending on where you are physically tax resident at that point, will ultimately depend who you pay tax to. Okay, is it too late to purchase a property before they finally make the change? Hold that thought. I'm going to come on to that in 2 seconds. Is property purchase in the Azores for a golden passport at an end then too? Well, it's an interesting topic, actually. The Azores is kind of not accepting the changes. They're kind of rebelling against the mainland at the moment, and it's still an ongoing topic. But as it stands, if they don't adopt the new laws, what may happen is that the Golden Visa may allow you to live in the Azores, but it may not get the EU passport after 5 years. So more to follow on that. I would say by the time I do the next webinar with portugal.com, I would likely have a better understanding once we have some news on that topic moving forward. Okay, is a backdated application possible, or is it when it is received by the Portuguese government? I'm not too sure. You might have to clarify that one. However, you can only apply for the program with a new purchase. Okay, at this point, if your previous property over recent time qualifies under the very, very strict investment criteria for property, there may be a possibility for you to act and apply retrospectively, but in the main, probably not. If you do want to send me the details of the property that you purchased, I should be able to explain whether or not it is applicable for the visa. Okay, I understand that is highly unlikely to happen so quickly. But what if I'm ready to invest tomorrow before the law changes? What if I invest in property? Does it still work? Hold that thought. The answer is yes, but hold that thought. We're going to come on to that in a second. Hi there, Dominic. Is it possible to set up a company which then owns the property or properties, like a limited company for buy-to-let in the UK? As far as a limited company in the UK is concerned, yes, you can do that, and you can draw the dividends or the rental income from it tax-free in Portugal. However, buying the property in Portugal under a company name, yes, you can do it, but it wouldn't qualify for the visa. The property has to be owned in your personal name in order for you to personally qualify for the visa. Hi there, Kimberly. What usually causes any rejection from qualification under the current regime in real estate investments? We have a 100% success rate, Kimberly. We've never had an application decline. My company's done over 10% of the world's golden visa applications since the program was launched in 2012. So we are very good at what we do. If there's any reason that you won't pass, we will tell you that before you purchase any property, very early in the process. The only reason at which you can be rejected is not because of the property, unless, of course, the laws change in between the process, which we'll come on to. But the properties that we recommend, we've already pre-approved. They already meet the criteria. We've already done successful applications on each of them. But the only reason you may not pass is if you have a criminal record. Well, that's about it, really. Yeah, so if you maintain the property, as long as you don't pick up a criminal record between when we do our criminal record check and the time at which you do your application, you'll be okay. The criteria is very simple, very, very straightforward. Hi there, Simon. Does investing 500,000 mean you had to pay 500 in cash, or could you buy at 500,000 and mortgage 50% of it? In short, you need to pay cash up to the figure of which the property qualifies. So we're going to have a look at the different criteria in a moment. But if the property qualifies for 500,000 and the property costs 500,000, it has to be cash. If the property costs $1 million, but it qualifies at 500, then you can buy cash. Again, has to be at 500, but you could mortgage the difference up to $1 million. But it has to be a cash purchase of at least the amount of which it qualifies at. Hope that answers your question, but you can remortgage, Simon. You can borrow money from another property. You can remortgage other property in Portugal or your home country. It just has to be cash for the property for the visa. Okay. Hi there. I'll just do a few more questions and then we'll come back to these shortly so we get enough time to cover all the slides. Is it too late to submit an application this month before the law is passed? Sorry, a real bad throat, talking too much. What is the earliest time the law could be passed? Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Hi there, Bryce. How many days do I have left to buy real estate until the law changes? Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Coming on that 2 seconds. Is there any way to apply today and get in under the old criteria? Hold that thought, Marie. The answer is yes, but hold that thought. Hi there, Cambria. Does the 280,000 investment apply to a couple or only one person? You have one main applicant, and then that person can add dependents, which will include both children, spouses, and parents potentially as well. But more on that shortly. I'll give you a full breakdown on which family members can be included. I want to do what you just said, I think. Do I need to come up with the money for my husband and daughter's application at this point, or could that be attached later? It could be exactly the same price, Marie, for everybody. We could put everybody on the same application. There's not a huge difference in kind of legal fees. There is a bit of extra tax to pay, but it's minimal. I did an application last week with about 13 family members in total. We got grandparents on there, children, we had everyone. But Maria, if you want to drop me an email and we'll catch up one day this week and I'll go through the costs with you. No problem. And I'll put my details up at the end of the webinar as well. Okay, on that note, I'm going to just jump into the next slides because I have some of the questions coming in now. I think I will cover as we go through and we'll come back to the questions towards the end. So I hope that's nice and clear. They're the changes. Overall, good news, but some significant changes for the program. Okay, so for those that want to get involved with the current criteria, you have two options. Well, sorry, you have two options for anyone that's still wanting to look at the Golden Visa. This is what you can do as it stands. Following on from yesterday, we now know that the criteria is going to change. We know property is going to be removed, and we know the minimum is going to jump from 280 to 500. But it's not yet known whether this will take 4 weeks to come into effect or 8 weeks. The earliest we feel will be, in theory, it could be in the next couple of weeks, but realistically, it would be it would not be characteristic of Portugal to bring in the new laws before 4 weeks from now. So that in our professional opinion is the earliest of which the new laws may come in, and it could be, it could be a couple of months. Just we may, in a best case scenario, go into September before the laws are introduced. So that brings us on to two options. Now, the first option is you can just simply wait for the new laws, okay? And if you have the budget there to invest at 500,000 euros and you like the idea of investing into other asset classes outside of property, then quite simply you can wait until the new laws come in and we have a clear understanding of what types of funds will be allowed, and we can go into more detail as to what the investment funds look like and the returns and the risk rating and what they're invested into and things like this. Option two, okay, to answer a lot of the questions that are popping up, you can start this process straight, but you have to do it pretty much straight away. We have 4 weeks. And worst case scenario, we think we've got 4 weeks. Okay, we can get an application done within, again, the fastest we've done it is 10 days. We've done 10 days. I've still not beaten 10 days to show. But on average, we can do, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks is the average. And that is including everything, including tax numbers, bank accounts, purchase of property, translation of documents, police clearance certificates, submission of the completion of the deed, and submission of the Golden Visa application. So if we start straight away, yes, we can still meet the deadline. And you have a very good chance of meeting the deadline. I can't say for sure at this point. I cannot guarantee that we will meet the deadline. Of course, we are also dependent upon how quickly you can provide documents. But we don't know for sure, more importantly, how or when the new law is going to come into effect. We don't think it will happen for another 4 weeks. So if you start straight away, you have a very good chance of qualifying at 280. Okay. And if you do start straight away, you have nothing to risk. If it doesn't go to plan, if the program is pulled after 2 weeks or 1 week, or we simply just don't have enough time to do the application, the worst case scenario is that you'll get a full refund on any monies that you have spent. Okay, you'll find within our terms of business that we will refund any monies that you've paid to any developers for a deposit and also any legal fees that you have paid. So in a worst case scenario, if we start the process straight away at 280 or any price point with property and we don't meet the deadline, the worst thing that can happen is you get all the money back and you're not going to be any worse off. So it's worth a try. It's definitely worth doing. I think we've got a 4 week window at this point. We can get things done within 2 to 4 weeks. If you're keen, if you want to do it, if it's something that you've been thinking of, get stuck in, let's speak straight away. I'll go through the costs with you. I'll show you the available property investments, and I can answer any questions that you have to make sure you have the information that you need to work out if it's something that you want to do. If we don't meet the deadline and you do have the budget for 500,000, then we could simply switch from the property option to the fund option at that point. So we can do our best to meet the deadline beforehand, but in a worst case scenario, again, you can either have a full refund or we simply switch your investment over to an investment fund at that time. So that's how it stands at the moment. If you want to buy property, like I said, property has accounted for 95% of applications over the past year. You can still do it. There is still time, but the clock is ticking. So please do send me an email. I will put up a link to my calendar at the end of the presentation shortly, and we can book those in. Let's speak, and I'll answer questions that you have. Okay, so again, I'll just take a few questions at this point, and then I'm just going to go through a few of the basics of the program just to make sure everyone is familiar with things like how many family members can be included and so forth. How do you advise the best way to transfer funds from the USA to Portugal using someone like MoneyCorp? Yeah, MoneyCorp is fine. We have a recommended currency provider which we have a good relationship with as a corporate partner. So generally, we'll make sure you have the best exchange rates, but whether it's MoneyCorp or your bank, generally I wouldn't use your bank. The banks are very expensive, so yeah, someone like MoneyCorp is fine. But we'll help you get a few quotes. As we get to that point, is it possible for a person to submit the application directly to the government, or do we have to use a wonderful third-party firm like Holborn? You can submit your application directly. The application is not actually the hard part. The part where you need assistance is, for example, with the lawyer and purchasing a property, which you will need a lawyer for. The application is quite simple. So yeah, you're very welcome to do it yourself, but that's all part of the service, is paying for a lawyer ultimately as well. And we can make sure it's done on time and correctly, and there's no problems. Can you add someone to the visa later? Yes, you can, but I would advise to do it at the outset, if possible. Of course, through these very turbulent times, we never know for sure what's going to change and how things like adding applicants after the law has changed. So my advice is to add as many people as you can whilst the law is as it is, because any time after the laws change may be subject to those new rules at that point. But yes, the answer is yes, you can do that if you wish. How old the dependent should be to qualify for the family visa? My children are 18 and 25. So we can add children up to the age of 21 very easily. However, older than that, we must prove that children are in full-time education. And we can do that in a number of ways, but we need to prove dependency at 3 key points. One is the initial application. There's renewal number 1 after 2 years, and there's renewal number 2 after 4 years. At each of those points, we must evidence that your children are still dependent. And we do that generally by proving financial dependency or by showing full-time education. So at 18-year-old, no problem at all. That'll be fine. 25, again, should be fine. But we would need to just have a conversation around education and whether or not perhaps we can help to enroll your eldest into some form of education to help with the renewals later on. Should be okay. We're generally pretty good at brainstorming through things like that. Hi there, Chris. Are the program changes likely to depress the housing market or Portuguese economy in general? Golden. This is kind of the point. This is kind of what the government's talking about. It's the impacts of the Golden Visa on housing prices. And personally, the vast majority of people think it's a little bit of nonsense, because property purchases that are linked to a Golden Visa equate to less than 1% of all property transactions in Portugal. It's less than 1%. And that's why there's so much of an uproar about why you would cancel a program that's brought in billions of euros to Portugal, because prices are going up. But yeah, they only equate for less than 1% of property transactions. So personally, no, I don't think it is. I mean, property prices in Portugal have been flying exponentially. They've gone up about 7% per year for the past decade. Over the past 2 years, we've seen an increment of over 30%. Well, since 2020, prices have gone up over 30%. I think a big part of that is due to people being able to move away from city centres like London, not having to go to the office all the time and having a bit more freedom with where they work from. And of course, if you're used to the kind of city centre lifestyle of London and other cities, the thought of picking up your desktop and sitting at the beach here in Portugal is quite appealing. So there's naturally a lot more demand, I think, for what have previously been underdeveloped countries. And now, yeah, people are, buying twice, 3 times as much property in Portugal as what you can buy in city centres like London. So I think there's a few reasons why prices are increasing. In my humble opinion, I don't see them coming down anytime soon. The demand is still hugely outstripping the supply. That is the big crisis at the moment. Will the Golden Visa change that? I don't think so. I think it will have very little impact. And of course, on the Portuguese economy, no, I don't think so, because the Golden Visa is to remain. Don't forget, it is going to be continuing from 500,000, which equates to the vast majority of applications. Hopefully that helps, Chris. That's my humble thoughts at this point. Hi there, Steve. The minimum investment is that person, or does it apply to per family under the Golden Visa? It applies to the entire family. So if it qualifies at 280, you have one main applicant, and you can add as many family members as you can that meet the criteria of a dependent, which again I'm going to come on to very shortly. So hold that thought. But yes, 280 can get the whole family, all 3 generations, over to Portugal. Hi there, Amel. Apostille docs in the US take time, like the FBI report, 4 to 6 weeks. Can a copy suffice to submit an application? Yes, Amel, that's fine. We do not need an apostilled copy of the FBI report to submit. We do need it. However, we can do that after the submission. As long as we have just a copy of the police report, that is perfectly fine to submit at this point. Hi there, Cambria. Are these property investments that you can live in, or are only commercial properties? Well, again, hold that thought. I'm going to come on to that very shortly. I'm doing things a little bit in reverse order tonight. I'm getting the news out before actually talking about the program itself. But the answer is yes, both at this point, but hold that thought. Hi there, Elizabeth. Can an investor add their adult children to the visa so that they can qualify as well for the Golden Visa? Potentially, yes, depending on their age and whether they are in education. If they are over the age of 26, shall we say, and not in any kind of education, it will be very difficult. If younger and still in some form of education, probably yes. But more on that very shortly, Elizabeth. Again, if you want to send me some details, children's names and ages, I can confirm how that would work. Okay, you mentioned a criminal record check is needed. How long does it take to get that in the US? To actually get the report, it can take a week or 2. To get it apostilled, it does take generally a couple of months. But yeah, in the US, it can be done pretty quickly. And we will help you with that as well. Hi there, Sarah. Does the spouse need to be financially dependent on the main applicant? No, not at all. As long as you live together, that is perfectly fine. You do not need to be financially dependent in any way. You just need to be the spouse. Whether married or unmarried is fine, as long as you live together. That is the main thing. Okay. Excellent. Right, let's jump on through some more slides, shall we? So, probably should have gone through this slide before some of those questions. But this is the detail of who can go on the visa. So the way it works is that anyone that doesn't already have an EU passport can apply for the visa. And there is one main applicant, okay, and that main applicant can then add as many family members as they like, as long as those family members come under the following criteria. That includes a spouse, again, whether married or unmarried. You can include children up to the age of 21, older potentially, but they must be within full-time education at the 3 points of renewal throughout the process. And you can include parents as well. My parents live in Spain. I don't know if I would want them necessarily living with me in Portugal, but they might want to get into Europe, So if you want parents that do want to travel and have the freedom to live in Europe or spend more than 3 months at a time in Portugal or any other country for that matter, you might want to add your parents on. If they're over the age of 65, their dependency is automatically assumed. Therefore, you don't have to evidence the dependency in any way. If they are younger than 65, then we would need to evidence them being dependent in some way. But in the main, yeah, you're good to go. We can include children, yourselves, and parents. Sometimes to get everybody involved, we might do the application in the parent's name to have their children as the dependents, or vice versa. But we can brainstorm through the family situation and work out how best to get everyone involved. Of course, the more people you can get on the same application, the better. And the benefits certainly for me, for children that are looking to study in Europe and have the freedom of living in any EU country in the future, is a huge plus. So if not just for yourself, it is for family as well. Parents, if parents are elderly, they may not feel up to traveling. They might not be too fussed about going on, but things to consider. But yeah, the more people, the better. Again, any questions on that, please drop in the Q&A and we'll come back to that shortly. Okay, so this will answer quite a few questions, I think, about the criteria. So I've kind of done a bit of color coding on this one. Let's see if it makes it a little bit easier to understand. So the real estate rules I've put in red at the top, because real estate is going to disappear in the near future. But as it stands, if you are looking to start an application straight away, we have a very good chance of beating the deadline as it stands and still being able to invest under these current rules, which are that you can invest into property, whether it be whether it be commercial property or residential property. As of January 2022, however, the rule did change that you can only purchase commercial property in any of the main cities, such as Lisbon, Porto, or basically anywhere on the coast that has a level of tourism. So the only way you can buy residential property is outside of those main cities, generally inland. So if you are looking for somewhere in the middle of nowhere where there is generally no tourism, you may still be able to buy residential. However, in reality, it's going to be very difficult to get into Portugal, shop around, find somewhere that you'd like to live, and submit your application before the law changes. So it's pretty safe to say that residential is kind of finished at this point. However, commercial investments, of course, they're not decisions made with your heart. You're more looking at the figures and the information that you have and looking at things like security for capital, investment returns. And it is very much a logical decision for which, where the local shops are, or, the style of the property is not quite as important compared to somewhere you're looking to live in and live there yourself, which is very much, an emotional decision, which takes a little bit longer. So commercial property is the way forward in the main. Now, to do that, you need to be able to do one of the following. Now, the general price point, as you probably noticed, is 500,000 for the Golden Visa. However, as it stands, if you buy a property that is in a low-density area in Portugal, that minimum comes down to 400,000. Okay, you get a 20% discount. If you invest in a property which is being renovated, okay, if you invest in a commercial renovation project where the building is over 30 years old, that comes down to 350. However, if you do that in a low density area, that minimum comes right down to 280,000 euros. It's literally half as much. Now, of course, Holborn have gone away and built a portfolio of investment options over recent years. And we have put together a couple, which I'm going to show you shortly, that meets the criteria to qualify at just 280 in some real solid investment options. So more on that shortly, but that's how it works. To qualify at 280, it has to be a commercial property that's over 30 years old in a low density area that's going through a full government approved renovation. If so, and you can beat the deadline, you can get this exactly the same visa and exactly the same passport as those investing at 500,000. So that's the current rules on real estate. The alternative options, okay, the ones in white are the ones that will remain. You can invest into Portuguese investment funds or venture capital funds, okay, from 500,000. I won't go into too much detail on that at this stage. We're not too sure exactly what the criteria is going to be for those investment funds just yet. But they will be of varying nature, investing into different types of sector, but they do need to be invested into Portugal primarily. And they'll all have different investment returns, they'll have different risk appetite. Of course, you'll be able to choose the investment fund in line with your personal preferences. but it will start, as I say, from 500,000. For those that have a flair in scientific research, you can contribute 500,000 to the Portugal's scientific or technological research. I've not had a single person ask me about that for some strange reason, but you can do it if you wish. You can incorporate a Portuguese business. You can set up a brand new business in Portugal if you wish, or you can purchase an existing business. If you are setting up a new business, you must employ at least 10 members of staff for the duration of the visa. If you are purchasing an existing business, you must maintain at least 5 members of staff. But again, the initial investment must be from 500,000. Again, currently you can simply transfer €1.5 million into a bank account for 5 years, which would be a horrible idea with the very low rates of interest in Portuguese banks, not to mention general lack of banking security compared to some other parts of the world in Portugal. But currently you can just transfer a load of cash into an account, but that is going to cease as well along with property when the new law comes into effect. Okay, so hopefully that's nice and clear. That's the current criteria. So if we meet the deadline, if we start pretty much straight away, we have a very good chance of meeting the deadline on that current criteria. And again, failing that, the worst case scenario is that you'll basically just have a full refund and be no worse off ultimately. So that's up for grabs as it stands. Okay, so a couple of last slides, and we're going to jump into the Q&A, I think. So just as a quick recap on the process, my company, again, we've done over 10% of the world's golden visa applications since the program was launched. We have a 100% success rate. It is a very complicated process. It can be quite stressful, but my team do the full shebang. Okay, we help initially to find an investment that meets your budget and the requirements that you have. We then apply for your Portuguese tax numbers. Okay, we can get that done within 2 to 3 days, and we need the tax numbers before you can really do anything in Portugal. But we'll get those. We used to then set up the bank account at that stage, but in light of the recent news back in February, we now set up the bank account after we've submitted the application for the visa. So again, we will set up your bank account as part of the service, but it takes 8 weeks to do that. So we simply don't have time to set the bank account up before the application. In the meantime, the transfer of funds can be done directly to the lawyer's escrow account to complete the purchase. And then we're able then to set up the bank account for you after the submission. The process, once we've got your tax numbers, then you will meet with the lawyer. Okay, the lawyer will then go through the legal documents for the property, the sale and purchase agreement, things like buyback agreements, the rental agreements in some cases, and you'll complete the power of attorney with the lawyer. Once all that is done, they'll be giving you the green light to transfer the balance for the property to their escrow account, and then the deed will be completed. Or in other words, you will become the owner of the property. And as soon as you've done that, that is the green light for us then to submit your application to SEF. And that's it. That's all we have to do before the deadline. We just have to submit the application to SEF, and we get a tracking number. And as long as we have that before the law changes, you can relax, and the new laws will not have any impact on your application. But again, I'm going to budget, like I said, 2 to 4 weeks to get to that point of getting tax numbers, completing the legal paperwork, transferring your funds, completing the deed, and submitting your application. From that point, like I say, we can relax a little bit then. We've got as much time as we need then to get the visa. The only time at which you need to physically do anything, well, physically travel to Portugal, shall I say, is when you do your biometrics appointment. You'll need to fly to Portugal around about 6 months after we submit the application. You'll meet with the lawyer and be accompanied to the SEF office to do your fingerprints and have your photo taken, ready to receive your visa after around 12 months. Current processing time from start to finish is around 12 months. That may increase slightly. Of course, there's lots of people trying to get into to meet the deadline, but hopefully not too much. At the moment, it's about 12 months. So again, we do all of this for you. We make it as nice as easy. You always have a point of contact throughout. We're very proactive. You'll have a point of contact at all these key stages. And I work as the project manager, if you like, making sure that everybody is talking to one another and we make sure that we beat that deadline. What we do is at least everything in our power to give you the best chance possible. So once we have the visa, okay, again, it's a 2-year visa. And the idea is you can renew the Golden Visa every 2 years for as long as you like, if you so wish. However, if you fancy learning a bit of Portuguese to a pretty basic level, after you've held the visa for 5 years, that's when we can apply for your permanent residency and your citizenship. Okay, which is the big carrot at the end of the stick, is to get that EU passport, which allows you then to live in any country within Europe, and of course visa-free travel to 187 countries worldwide. So yeah, that's the plan. Sounds easy, doesn't it? Sounds very easy. But as a quick recap, the application is going to take 2 to 4 weeks. To submit the application, we've got to do that. We have to do that before the laws come into effect, which could be, in our professional opinion, any time from 4 to 8 weeks from now. Okay, in theory, it could happen a little earlier, but all things considered, 4 to 8 weeks we feel is the most realistic time frame at this point for the new laws to change. We'll then have 12 months to wait to get the visa. Okay, but we don't need to have the visa before the deadline. We only need to apply for it. Once you have the visa, you'll have that for 2 years. We then do the first renewal. We do the second renewal after year 4. And after the 5th year, you can then apply for your passport. Well, that's it. That's all we need to do. That's where we're at. So let's do a few questions. And then I'm going to show you 2 properties right now that meet the criteria. And in fact, no, sorry, please bear with me. Let's get straight through to the Q&A. I'm going to get to the Q&A shortly and we'll fire the questions out all at the same time. Okay, so property-wise, I have, interestingly, despite the program coming to an end this morning, was told we've got a brand new property coming available, which I was quite surprised about. The last development from this developer was sold within a matter of weeks, completely sold out. So clearly they're confident on reselling a whole new hotel before the laws change, which is great. And it is this one here. It is a 5-star Hilton hotel. Literally 20 minutes from where I live down in the Algarve, which is, of course, the best part of Portugal. But yeah, it's going to be a 5-star resort. And the way that the program works, okay, is that you can buy part of the hotel. You buy a share in the hotel for 280,000 euros, and you become a co-owner of the hotel. Your name is added to the deeds to that hotel. And it meets everything that you need for the 280 price point. It's a renovation. It's over 30 years old. It's in a low density area and it's a commercial property. So it does the trick. It's a developer. It's one of Portugal's, if not the biggest developer in Portugal. We've completed now over 10 full hotels with this developer just over the past 6 years. In total, they now have a portfolio of over 40 hotels across Portugal. The incentives include the offer to pay the IMT tax, which is a big plus. The IMT tax is the biggest tax that you pay when buying a property in Portugal. Generally at this price point, about 20,000 euros. But that's paid for by the developer. The VAT of the refurbishment is also paid for by the developer as well. There is a buyback in place. Okay, the buyback is what it says in the tin. Basically, as soon as you don't need the property anymore, i.e. when you have your passport or your permanent residency, you can trigger the clause in the contract to immediately sell back the share for the 280,000 euros. So there's no need to sell. There's no need to have a realtor or any legal representation. It's just a transfer of ownership, nice and easy at that point, to release that initial 280,000 back out when you have your passport. During that time, the developer also allows you to stay at any of their hotels for 7 days, free of charge, each year for the minimum stay requirement in Portugal. And you can choose from, like I say, over 40 different 4- and 5-star hotels, not just the Hilton. There's many different hotel groups from this developer. But yeah, great if you want to do a bit of traveling around Portugal each year rather than staying in the same spot. Time to application on this development, because of the way that basically the relationship that we have, the legal team that's in place, we can get this through with as little as 2 weeks' time. Again, Please do leave us as much time as possible to account for any delays, but this property is still eligible and can be done before the new laws come into effect. The downsides with this one, there's no rental income, okay, and there's no interest on the capital. Okay, it is purely a way to qualify for the visa with as little capital as possible. It's not designed to be profitable. There is still a cost involved. You still have to pay for legal fees, and there's still a little bit of tax, although not too much. But there are still the government fees to pay. But it's a great option. It's a good developer. It's a well-known hotel brand, and you get exactly the same passport at 280 as you do with 500. So a real solid option that can be done in time. Behind door number 2, okay, is my personal favourite at the moment. It is actually a hotel that is being renovated further north in Portugal, which is the Wyndham Gardens project called the Rye Hotel. When it's finished, it will be a 4-star resort, okay, all as new. And the proposition is very similar to the Hilton Hotel. Although it's a smaller hotel, the investment qualifies again at €280,000. It's still a well-known developer. The developer again pays the IMT and the VAT. You still have a guaranteed buyback once you need it. The big incentive with this one, however, is that there is a rental income paid as well. The developer will pay a lump sum of €30,000 as soon as you complete the deed. So we'd be looking to complete the deed within the next 4 weeks, and within the next 5 weeks, you would immediately get that €30,000 back, effectively allowing you to qualify at 250. You're buying it effectively at 250 and selling back at 280 in 5 to 6 years' time. So this is the lowest capital route to the visa as it stands. Again, the hotel developer will allow you to stay in the hotel for 7 days free of charge each year. And again, we can get this through within the next 2 to 4 weeks as well. So that's it. Those are the two at the moment. Other than that, the options are few and far between. Very, very few and far between. Most of the developments above 280 have sold out. And even if the worst are still available, it'd be very difficult to beat the deadline at this stage. But all in all, yeah, hopefully I've given everyone a good idea of where things are up to. I hope that was helpful. I've brought my webinars right up to date now with the latest technology, with a QR code out on there as well. So please do feel free to scan the QR on the code. It'll take you through to Calendly, at which point we can talk through any of the information that I've covered. I can also provide things like the development brochures. I have a very handy guide to Portuguese tax, which will make for some good bedtime reading as well. Cost illustrations, okay. Each cost illustration is personalized depending on the property and number of family members that we can include. So once we speak on Zoom, I can go through the cost with you on screen so you have a clear understanding of what's involved over the next 5 to 6 years. And we'll clarify, of course, stock availability on your favorite developments. And overall, yeah, we'll talk through any questions that you have at this stage. So, yeah, I'm going to get stuck into some questions at the moment. And, yeah, we've got a few minutes to finish off. So, yeah, anything I've missed, please do drop in some Q&A as we go through. Okay, so hi, Simon. What does unmarried spouse mean? What proof do you have to supply that you are an unmarried spouse? Well, quite simply, Simon, that you are living together. Quite simply, your partner, whether married or unmarried, as long as you live together, and we can evidence that with a utility bill to show names and addresses at the current address, that's fine. You don't need to be married to add your spouse. So hopefully that's nice and clear. Hi there, Sarah. Are there nationalities that are problematic? Yes, yeah, there are. But not many, to be fair. I mean, it's difficult with Russian nationalities at the moment for obviously political reasons, but not impossible. There is some third world countries which carry with it some extra due diligence to be done, but no, nothing major. You've got me in suspense there, Sarah. I'm wondering what nationality that you are now to ask that question, but I'm sure we'll be fine. Other side, just seeing the slide. What is a registered partnership from an unmarried spouse perspective? So, if you have a civil law partnership, basically, Simon, is fine. So, civil partnership, just living together whether you're married. So officially, unofficially, all is fine as long as we can prove that you live together at the same address. Then we can add that second person as a spouse. No problem. Hi there, Soraya. Sorry that I had to leave the seminar. Thank you for the information. Can you please post your email address for those of us who have to leave? Yes, please find my email address on the screen. And of course, we'll get in. You should have also had, everyone should have had an email this morning from Zoe, again, with a link to our website and a link to my calendar. But yes, no problem. Hopefully that has been helpful, Soraya. So the funds for the deed need to be transferred during this short period. Yes, they do. You need to purchase the property and submit your application before the law changes. So as you can see, a lot of work to be done. Like I say, the quickest we can do it, if you work with us in a timely manner, we can do that within 2 to 4 weeks. That includes tax numbers, purchasing the property, completing the deed, and submitting your application before the law changes. What else we got? Hi there, Cambria. At what point are you qualified to have a work visa in the EU? Well, as soon as you receive your visa, Cambria, as soon as the visa comes through, which takes around about 12 months, you can live, work, retire, or just sunbathe in the EU. Oh, sorry, I misunderstood your question. So that's for Portugal. You can live and work in Portugal as soon as you get the visa. To get access to the EU, that comes after the 5 years that you've held the visa. Well, let me be more specific. You can travel to the EU at any time with the visa, okay? But you will be restricted to just 3 months at a time in other EU countries during that initial visa period. However, once you receive the passport, which you can apply for after 5 years, that's when you can then live full-time without any restrictions in any of the EU countries. Hi there, Andrew. Can you initiate the buyback before the 5-year period if you change your mind? It depends on the developer, Andrew. In theory, yes, but we just want to clarify that before obviously contracting to the developer. But yeah. More often than not, yeah, I don't see why not. The buyback also is not it's not dependent on getting the passport. It is a separate agreement. So even if you did change your mind and didn't want to go for the passport or for permanent residency, you still have a buyback in place. Okay. Hi there, Srikant. What's the expected return on investment on this property? Because we've looked at 2 properties, one of which doesn't have a return. Okay, it's purely a way to qualify for the visa with €280,000. The second pays an upfront rental income of €30,000. Okay, so you can do the maths on that, Srikant. Hi there, Simon. What's the total cost of the investment on the Hilton development, i.e. on top of the 280, including all fees and taxes? Simon, I would just ask you to drop me an email with number of family members to be included, and then I can give you a full breakdown. Better yet, I would say book a meeting in my diary, and then I can go through any questions that you've got, all at the same time, rather than backwards and forwards on email. But yeah, I just need to know in general how many family members, and I can go through the full costs with you. On top of the 280, yeah, so same question again. At this point, there's generally costs are considered 2 things. There's legal fees and taxes, or government fees, shall we say, but it depends on the number of family members and the development. So the next step, again, of course, is to go through the costs. So please drop me an email. Please book into the diary as soon as you can. We have limited time just to stress to get everything through. So I would highly recommend that go through everything all together in one call, and I can go through any questions that you have to give you as much time as possible to work out if you'd like to do it. That's not a question, but wanted to say thank you for walking us through and explaining everything in such detail. You're very welcome. I've covered a lot in a very short period of time, but anything I've missed, please do get in touch. I'm happy to catch up one day next week. For the Wyndham property, is the €30,000 rental income for what period of time? Is there a possibility of future rental income? So the 30,000 is a one-off upfront payment. Okay, it's paid immediately, but that is your share of the rental income over the next 5 to 6 years. Okay, the hotel is not going to be ready until next year. Naturally, the hotel will be occupied from next year. And what the developer is basically saying is, look, you can take 30,000 euros now. This will help to pay for things like legal fees and government fees. But then that's it. That's just 30,000 euros paid as a one-off upfront fee, and it's a mandatory buyback. So both developments have a mandatory buyback. So you can extend the buyback up to a maximum of 12 years if you need to, but there isn't any incentive to keep it longer than you need to. There's no further rental income with these developments. It is just simply purchased back at 280 as soon as you ask them to do so. Okay, hi there, Rachel. Due to work, I missed the start of the webinar. Can you please advise if there is a recorded webinar for me to listen for the visa, and with new 500,000 euros limit for property investment, how do I go about to invest in property? There will be a recording sent out this week, Rachel. For now, again, with the time that we've got, with the option of hopefully qualifying for property in time, I would say let's just speak in person. If you scan the QR code or drop me an email, we can speak. I think I'm booked tomorrow, but you can pick a day for next week. We'll go through it together, and I'll just get right into the questions that you have, and we'll go through what you need to. But yeah, you'll get a copy of the recording in the meantime, hopefully early next week. Okay, super. Right, I think I've covered all the live questions. Let's just see if there's any questions from the registrations as well, which we've not already covered. Just got a few minutes to finish, everyone. So if there's anything I've missed, feel free to drop any questions in. Okay, so we've covered off the time frame to apply for the visa. Can UK citizens still apply for the D7 or the Golden Visa program? Yes, you can indeed, but limited time on the current laws. Are Indian citizens eligible for the Golden Visa? Yes, Portugal is not prejudiced towards Indians. That is completely fine, Rahini. Indians can still apply for their citizenship, no problem. What is the end date for the Golden Visa program? Yeah, so I think we've covered that in enough detail. There is no end date for the Golden Visa program. It's just that the investment minimum will be changing to 500,000 in 4 to 8 weeks' time, and property will no longer qualify from that point. Okay, how do we know if a property you're interested in falls into the scheme? Hopefully now you'll have a good idea of what qualifies for the program. What else we got? I would be investing with my 2 sisters to obtain the Golden Visa. Hi there, Kevin. Would we all get the Golden Visa for one investment? Well, unfortunately, sisters are not deemed to be dependents. Parents are okay, children are okay, spouses are okay, but sisters, or siblings, shall we say, do not fall under dependents. So for sisters and brothers, they would need to do their own separate application and investment. And of course, they could include their family as well. But yeah, unfortunately, colleagues, friends, and siblings don't come under the criteria as dependent. Okay, what is the latest date to purchase real estate? Yeah, so again, it's going to take, I really would encourage everyone to give us 4 weeks, although we can get it done with as little as 2 weeks. Please don't leave it to the last minute. We are processing record numbers of applications at the moment. So yeah, if it's something that you want to do, please don't waste any time. Let's speak next week. I'll go through any questions that you have. I don't want to rush into making a decision, but it is important that you get the information that you need as soon as possible to be able to make that decision. So every day counts at the moment. It is now just a matter of time before the new laws come into effect. Okay, what is the easiest, cheapest, fastest way to get in before the deadline? In short, Simon, yeah, I would be going at the Wyndham. The Wyndham is the lowest capital option. It's effectively 250. We can get it done in as little as 2 to 4 weeks. And yeah, we do everything for you. So it's about as easy as it gets. But yeah, Wyndham would be my preference at this point. How much do you have to pay in cash in a UK pension? How much will you have to pay to cash in a UK pension? Well, Paula, that depends on your tax regime in the UK. But I will be able to answer some of those questions, but let's do that on a one-to-one basis. If you have any questions about drawing from savings or investments. How does one proceed to obtain assistance to complete the process? Yep. So again, hi there, Rachel. I think I may have covered that question before. Within my team, again, we facilitate the whole process from start to finish. We're not lawyers, by the way. We're kind of we facilitate the whole process. We're the point of contact. We do all the management. We try to make life as easy as we can, but there will be an external lawyer acting on your behalf to complete the transition of the ownership of the property. And of course, we will communicate with everybody and all the different moving parts, with the translation, with the police reports, with the meeting with SEF, with the renewals, with absolutely everything. Very, very busy at the moment. We're all over the place, but we've increased our team size and we are still meeting very, very, very impressive deadlines. Okay, a few more here, and we've got a few more questions coming in live. Am I still eligible if I haven't started the process? Yes, Daniel, you are indeed, but we need to move pretty quickly on the current laws. Or you can take option number 1 and just wait for the new laws to come into effect. If you're happy to invest from 500 and into investment funds rather than property, but if property now is the time to act. Another question regarding fees. Hi there, Reem. Again, please do book in a meeting with me. We'll go through all your questions. We'll work out how many family members can be included, and I'll go through the costs with you on the screen and answer all the questions that you have. Can I still apply? Hi there, Bryce. What is the smallest amount of money? So again, I think we've covered that now. Yes, you can still apply, and the minimum investment is effectively $250 if you go for the Wyndham, because it pays a €30,000 immediate cash back. Hi there, Pierre. What is the Golden Visa program realistically going to end? Yeah, so I think we've covered that as well. Hi there, Michael. Is there a current updated map detailing the areas eligible for property purchase? Not as such. I mean, the whole of property, the whole of Portugal is still eligible. Of course, you can no longer buy residential property in the main cities. But at this very, very late stage, property is do or die. So it's what you see is the choice ultimately if you want to qualify with property right now. The clock is a ticking, unfortunately. Can we cover a loan with the bank? Yep, so we covered that off. So it must be a cash purchase up to the qualifying amount. If it qualifies at 280, it's got to be cash at 280. You can take a mortgage, but not on the property in question. It must be from raising finance from sources elsewhere. Okay, right. I think we've covered most of these. Would there be? Would the entire investment need to be all done at the same time, or could it be done in multiple installments? Yes, it has to be all done at one time, purchased in full and completed before the law changes in 4 weeks from now. Okay, and there's other questions here. I think we've covered all those from the registration. Super, right. Let's get stuck into the live questions and then we shall finish up. What are the remote locations? What real estate agents will be able to assist? The remote locations, I assume you mean low density areas, perhaps, or maybe inland. There's no particular real estate agents that would assist us. Such if you're looking to buy residential property, you can look on Google, you can look on the likes of Idealista to find residential property. If it's commercial property, we have access to all of the commercial property available in Portugal, of which the majority is now sold out. But as I mentioned, we've still got the Wyndham, we've still got the Hilton on a commercial basis. Hi there, Bryce. If you choose to hold on to the property past 5 or 6 years, would there be a rental income? With the Wyndham and the Hilton, unfortunately not, because they are mandatory buybacks. So both buyer and seller are contracted to put the process in reverse. So you will be contracted to sell it back. The developer will be contracted to buy it from you. There is not an option to keep it. Of course, with the likes of Hilton and the Wyndham, they cannot have 100, 200 individual private owners within the hotel. So with developments that qualify as co-ownership like these, then it is just simply a mandatory buyback with no option to keep it. So what you would do in that case, Bryce, is you would get the cash back and then you would go and buy whatever you like. You could even buy 2 properties with that money and generate a rental income for Airbnb. It could be a property for you to live in. It's just that it wouldn't be this particular property in question. You would just get the cash back and then go and buy your dream home, perhaps, Bryce. And yes, where you want to live. At that point, you'll not be restricted by area or cost as well. So there you go. Hi there, Cambria. Do you have residential properties in low density areas in your portfolio to show? In short, Cambria, we don't. You don't need, I suppose, an investment advisor for residential property. You just want to have a look on the internet. But again, you've only got 4 weeks to fly to Portugal, find somewhere to live, and purchase the property. So I think it'd be very difficult at this stage to do residential property. But if you want to give it a shot, you can buy residential property from €400,000 inland Portugal and still qualify as it stands. Okay, Rebecca, hi there. Is there a retirement visa? I've heard if you can prove a certain amount of income per month, you could get a visa. There are other visa options, Rebecca, of which they require full-time residency in Portugal to do. It's not, unfortunately, the topic of tonight's webinar, but if you want to have a discussion one-to-one on that basis, please do drop me a message. Hi there, Reem. Thanks for the information. Sounds like the Wyndham investment to go under prior to the owner raising all the funds. Will I lose all that? Should the Wyndham go under prior to the owner raising all the funds? Okay. No, not at all, Reem. I mean, well, first of all, Wyndham is only the hotel manager. Okay. The hotel is already there. The actual hotel is already there. It's just in need of renovations, which will be done over the next kind of 6 months or so. So if I understand your question correctly, if Wyndham went bust, then another hotel manager would take over the building and continue to manage it. For example, another hotel manager is the Hilton or the Hard Rock Hotel, as example. So someone else would take over from the Wyndham, but no, it would not affect your investment. You would still have ownership in the property. The share that you buy is already worth in excess of the 280,000 that it's going to cost in its pre-renovated condition. Of course, when it's renovated, the share will be worth considerably more. So the security that you have is within the ownership of the asset rather than the success of Wyndham, for example. But it's it's good to be associated with a well-known hotel brand, nonetheless. But hopefully that makes sense. Did I hear the deadline is 2 weeks from now to purchase the property below €500,000? What is the deadline? The deadline, in our humble opinion, is likely to be somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks from now. We're at the last stage now where the new draft law has been approved. It's now just waiting for the president to implement that law. In theory, it could happen from now. If the president put it at the top of his pile of things to do, he could approve it and he could put it into effect straight away. Realistically, we don't think that will happen, certainly within the next 2 weeks. It's unlikely to happen in the next 4 weeks. Again, in our humble opinion, the reality is we don't actually know for certain. It could happen at any point, but if history is anything to go by, we should have at least 4 weeks before the deadline is upon us. In a worst case scenario, you can start the process. If we don't meet the deadline, the worst thing that will happen is you get a full refund on any monies that you have spent. But if we start the process straight away, you have a very, very good chance of meeting the deadline under the current criteria. Is the Golden Visa process, where do I sign the legal package in the US? Where do I go to sign? Well, actually, everything is done electronically. So you'll meet with, so the initial documents are sent through DocuSign. The legal meeting with the lawyer will be done through Zoom. or the equivalent. Everything is signed on the screen. We will then send a courier to your home address to collect the original documents, but you do not need to travel anywhere. Everything is done from home. The only time at which you need to physically travel to Portugal is 6 months after the application is submitted to do your biometrics here in Portugal. How long does the property have to be owned? Well, you need to have the visa for at least 5 years. It'll take you about 1 year to get the visa. You then need to hold the property for 5 years thereafter. So you're going to be holding the property for at least 6 years in total. What is the €280,000 limit? Is that the current maximum? Sorry, so the 280,000 currently is the minimum. Okay, you can qualify at 280 right now, but when the law changes, it will increase to 500,000 at that point, which again is likely to be in around 4 weeks from now. So you're okay for 280 at the moment, but we've got to start pretty quick because we're going to need ideally 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks to get everything done in time. Hi there, Emma. Will the developer put in contracts of the guaranteed buyback and not open-ended? Yeah, of course. The buyback is a very standard agreement. Both parties are legally obliged to honour that agreement. And yeah, you have all the details as you would expect within that agreement. The lawyer will review that with you. Any queries that you have or amendments you'd like to request, they're generally pretty open to that as long as there's nothing significant. But yeah, we've never had a complaint about the buyback. It's very straightforward and very clear from the outset. May I clarify, the quickest, shortest and current route is 280, which is the Wyndham to qualify now. Yes, that is correct. To qualify in the quickest, shortest way with the minimum investment, it is the Wyndham Hotel, which qualifies at 280. It pays a €30,000 cash back as soon as you complete the deed, and we can get that done within 2 to 4 weeks. So yes, that would be the one I would go for. It's also the most profitable option at 280 at the moment. I think there's still pretty good availability, and there was still around about 15 spots left at last check of the original 120. So yeah, Wyndham is my current favourite as it stands. Okay, right. I think we're going to close on that point. I've done 52 questions there. We've got through loads, plus the ones from earlier. So really good Q&A session. I hope everyone found it helpful. I will be doing another commentary on the topic in a couple of weeks' time. So keep your eyes out for that. I'll of course, follow up to everybody with an email, or you have an email from my assistant, Zoe, offering a meeting should you wish to have a one-to-one discussion next week. I'll keep you up to date with any news flashes with my newsletter that will go out from time to time as well. And yeah, to finish, like I say, if this is something that you want to do, certainly if you want to invest into property or to qualify at 280, time is now running out. We do need to start as soon as possible. If you are still keen at 500,000 and going down the investment fund route, big thumbs up. You can have as much time as you like, because the program will live to see another day. Which, on that note, we shall finish on a positive. Thanks for everyone for joining, and I look forward to speaking to everyone soon. Thank you much. Bye bye.